Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155 from UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not.
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcast. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championship, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championship, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel Delio, and hopefully your day is going bueno. Wherever you are, whoever you are, as we're all persevering through yet another tough year, we are looking towards the future, and the future of sports looks like things are getting a wee bit back to normal, though. I have said in the past that I am a huge basketball fan, and there's currently this controversy going on whether or not there should be an all-star game happening for basketball. Something could be said about the Pro Bowl for football. But with all-stars being announced at the time of this recording, all-stars will be announced today, and then next week we're going to see the reserves for the NBA All-Star team. For those of you who don't watch basketball, throughout every single year, they pick the 24 best players, best athletes in NBA to play alongside with one another, to play against each other in a 12v12 basketball game. And I'm thinking, you know what? Since All-Star Weekend is right around the corner for basketball, I decided to go make my own All-Star team for MMA. So I put here the top 24 best MMA fighters in the world. Now, I will say this though, my overall knowledge of mixed martial arts is very bleak when, I don't understand, stuff like Invicta, Gladiator FC. One championship is something that I'm trying to get into. Bellator, I would want to get into. But right now, from my perspective, here are 24 fighters who I look at their careers, I look at what they've done, especially in the past 3 years, and I just list them down as these are the 24 best MMA fighters right now in the world. Now, I'm gonna bring up numbers here, but this isn't indicative of where they're ranked among the top 24 fighters. I just named 24 fighters. The rankings don't really matter. Like, number one here, I got Jon Jones. Is Jon Jones the number one best fighter right now in the entire world? I don't know. You can make an argument that he can be. Maybe. You can make an argument for Kumaru Usman. You can make an argument for Valentino Shuchenko. I listed all these fighters, and don't worry, the rankings I give for them isn't indicative of how good they are relative to everyone else. So, I'm just going to pop up right here. We have 24 fighters. First off, for the number one draft pick, I got here Jon Jones. And for Jon Jones, without a doubt, he is arguably, maybe considered the best MMA fighter in the world. In terms of pound-for-pound rankings and what he has done in the UFC, he's pretty much undefeated in the UFC, minus that one fight he had with Hamill, to which he lost the fight via disqualification here. And for Jon Jones, it's very interesting to see what happens to him over the span of the next year. Because right now, Jon Jones, if you ask many people, he's pretty much heralded as the GOAT of mixed martial arts and UFC, which is strange because I watch a whole lot of MMA on points. I look into a lot of discussions and forums and what's going on in social media on how do people perceive Jon Jones? And it's weird because there's an asterisk to all his wins, to all his victories, due to drug issues, to him being a horrible role model outside MMA. There's even this argument of hey, is Jon Jones really a superstar in mixed martial arts? Is he really? Compared to Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey. And so when you look at Jon Jones, it's very easy to argue on why he is not as great as he actually is. One can argue against that. But at the same time, though, when you go look at all his accomplishments, relative and compared to every other champion and every other fighter in the UFC, yes, you want this alternative universe for Jon Jones, where Jon Jones, he keeps a light heavyweight belt, and he just fights for the light heavyweight belt, and he's clean, no drug issues, none of his belts get vacated. He's a role model citizen. There is an alternative world where Jon Jones could be, without a doubt, 100% the greatest of all time in mixed martial arts. But when you look down to his history, it's very sketchy. It really is. And so for Jon Jones here, he's without a doubt maybe one of the best fighters in the entire world, arguably the greatest fighter of all time. But you can't, and even though there's an asterisk to his career, you can't deny the fact that he is one of the all-time greats. And I got here at number 2, Valentino Shuchenko. You can't deny the fact that Valentino Shuchenko, she is the second most dominant woman in the UFC right now. She is maybe the most dominant woman right now in mixed martial arts. Heck, I would say that Valentino Shuchenko, her current reign right now as flyweight champion, is a lot more dominant and is a lot more secured than Amanda Nunes' time as bantamweight champion. Because Amanda Nunes, she's double timing as a featherweight champion and the bantamweight champion. But when you look exclusively at just a singular division, Valentina is the most dominant woman right now in mixed martial arts. You can make an argument for Kayla Harrison, maybe, but there's also like a weird asterisk to Kayla. Now, I put Kayla Harrison on my list as like top 24 best fighters right now in the world. But when you compare Kayla Harrison and the competition she has up at PFL versus Valentina at the UFC, yes, the fight division is maybe the second or third weakest division right now in the UFC. But even at PFL, you have Kayla Harrison. She's fighting against a woman who have a win-loss record that's not really all that impressive. She's fighting against people who haven't even fought more than 5 times in their MMA careers. Or they're fighting rookies, or she's fighting fighters who are coming in from another sport. So that's Kayla Harrison's asterisk to her career. And everyone knows it. Like, even Kayla Harrison's manager knows that she's not fighting the best athletes in the world right now. That's why she's constantly calling out all these other women's champions. But Valentina Shuchenko, she is the champion for the women's fight division for the UFC. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I think a whole lot of people can agree here that Valentina Shuchenko's, her reign, although dominant, isn't really exciting. There's really no narratives right now happening in the UFC's fight division other than, hey, Valentina Shuchenko, she's going to win. Lol. Now, of course, at some point in the future, Valentina will lose, right? I mean, she's still, in her early 30s? Early 30s, best shape she's ever been in her life. She's pretty much the whole package right now in the fight division, because initially when she came into the flyweights, or in the UFC, she was like karate, kickboxing type fighter, and now she's adding in wrestling, and now she's grappling a whole lot in her bouts now. And one of the sad parts about her reign is the fact that although she is being really dominant, you can't go out and tell me, hey, tell me, what is your favorite Valentina Shuchenko fight? Because there really isn't that much competition right now in the fight division. There is Jessica Andrade, who is spicing up the division. Even Jessica Andrade says that the division is kind of stale and kind of boring. And one fighter that a lot of people are really high on was Macy Barber. And I still remember this. Like, Macy Barber, she's one of the best wrestlers out there in the world. She wrestled with Ben Askren. She's under the tutelage of Duke Rufus. Like, she is the complete package. She's only, I think, in her early to mid-20s, Macy Barber. But Macy Barber, her stock has completely dropped off ever since the Roxanne Modafferi fight. And it dropped even further down when she fought against Alexa Grasso. So, the hope that we had for Macy Barber becoming a competitor against Valentina Shuchenko, because Macy Barber, I believe it, and many other people believe, that Macy Barber can 100% definitely defeat Valentina Shuchenko. There is definitely a world out there where Valentina loses to Macy Barber. The problem, though, is, will Macy Barber even be given the opportunity to fight against Valentina Shuchenko, considering that she's in a losing streak right now, and she's in the middle of the pack of the division? So, yes, Valentina Shuchenko, dominant champion, but also a boring champion, sadly, in the fight division. It's not her fault. She isn't having the stack competitions happening either at bantamweight and especially at the strawweight division. And I got number 3 here, Kumaru Usman, making my MMA All-Star team. So, Kumaru Usman, this guy, has he been disrespected? 100%. I disrespected him, and I apologize for it, definitely. Kumaru Usman, especially for a lot of people, and when he was making his way towards becoming a champion, and he started giving these really cringe promos where he's like, hey, I was giving only 70%, wait till I reach 100%, and he's always in these very boring grappling bouts. And yes, I will say this, his bouts may at times be very boring. Like, there's no way you can watch Kumaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal and not turn away from the TV and be like, well, I know how this fight's gonna go. I'm not gonna watch because this guy's gonna wrestle him. Well, then what you do? And you know what? No blame for Kumaru Usman. He is fighting the right way, and I agree with what Kumaru Usman says in the post and pre-fight press he did in his last UFC show. He did say that he's not the flashiest fighter. He's not the most exciting fighter. He's not the quickest of fighters. He's not the most elaborate fighters. He's not the most technical fighters out there. But he knows how to wrestle. He knows how to go out there and get W's and get wins. So, a huge respect for Kumar Usman here. Kumar Usman, his stock has definitely risen up, especially since Dana White. And a whole lot of people are now comparing him to Georges St. Pierre. And there was a recent interview that came out where Kumar Usman, he was discussing, hey, what will it take for Kumar Usman to go move up in weight class and fight a middleweight? Because I firmly believe Kumar Usman can definitely compete in the middleweight division. It is from Kumar Usman's perspective, when he was asked about this on whether he wants to go move up, he says that he wants there to be at least 2 African world champions in the UFC. So right now he is talking about himself and Arasanya, maybe Francis Ngannou. And that's a huge maybe, because Francis Ngannou is going to come to his fight against Stipe Miocic as the underdog. And also, Arasanya, if he were to defeat Jan Blackwix, which will be a fight happening 3 weeks from now from the time of this recording, he could be vacating his middleweight belt. So we're going to have Kumar Usman being the only African-born world champion in the UFC. So don't expect Kumar Usman to move up in weight class anytime soon. Also, although Kumar Usman currently has the record for most wins ever, all time, in the UFC's welterweight division, he's still, I think, 10 or 8 fights away from matching or eclipsing the record that GSP has in having the most title fight wins in the UFC's welterweight history. So Kumar Usman, man, he's got a long way to go, but he also said he also wants to slow down. I got here at rank number 4, joining my all-star team, we have Amanda Nunes. Amanda Nunes, she is, without a doubt, the GOAT of the UFC's women's divisions. She is, without a doubt, the GOAT. Now, some people might say Chris Cyborg, Ronda Rousey here. Is she the most exciting fighter out there in the world right now? No, I think the current iteration of Amanda Nunes right now isn't all that interesting, to be bluntly honest with you. Her bout against Felicia Spencer, her bout against Germaine de Randamie, she definitely has molded her game. And here's what I believe. I think the time frame or the era of Amanda Nunes, she's going to go out there, knock you out in a minute and 28 seconds, I think that's over. I really do. I think we're seeing a very mature Amanda Nunes now. She's fighting, like, her and Valentino Shuchenko came in as, these two will go knock you out, to now, these two are calculating, smart, slow-paced fighters who are perfectly fine wrestling you in order to go garner the decision victory. Great respect for Amanda Nunes. She is the lioness. She is the greatest of all time in women's mixed martial arts. But I also have to say this, because she's pretty much cleaned up the flyweight division, pretty much with the exception of Germaine de Randamie, there's nobody else in the bantamweight division who you could see fight against Amanda Nunes. Now, note though, I really do want to see Juliana Pena versus Amanda Nunes, just so I can go see a lot more Juliana Pena promos. Because it's awesome. And even now, people are still making fun of Juliana Pena for her calling out Amanda Nunes, when Pena is nowhere near close enough to go get a title fight against Nunes. So I put there Amanda Nunes, no doubt about it, all-star team, one of the best ever, future Hall of Famer. But number 5, though, I got Ong La Song, who pretty much is the poster boy for one championships. Now, if you don't know Ong La Song, I recommend you do. He is, without a doubt, if you bring him over to the UFC, kind of similar with Michael Chandler, guaranteed top 3 ranked fighters fighting. Guaranteed. He's that darn good. So, beforehand, I think this time last year, he was simultaneously both the middleweight champion and the light heavyweight champion for one championship's MMA divisions. And then he fought against the heavyweight champion in Brandon Vera. And whatever your viewpoint is on Brandon Vera, and that you think the guy's a fake champion, and that he's purposely given really easy bad talents, and I do believe that I think Brandon Vera is a very overrated fighter, and his record is really indicative of his actual skill in the cage. But whatever. So Ong La Song, middleweight champion, lightweight champion, ended up knocking out the heavyweight champion, and in theory is the dark heavyweight champion. So one could argue that he should have 3 belts. Can you imagine this guy? Can you imagine any MMA fighter in a major organization holding 3 championship belts? I know Conor McGregor, he wants to do it. There are a lot of UFC fighters who would love to do that also. Arasanya, if he defeats Jan Blackwix, will probably be the closest thing we have to Ong La Song. That's how great he is. Now, Ong La Song, there is an asterisk to his light heavyweight reign, because there is no light heavyweight division. It doesn't exist. If you go over to the One Championship rankings, only some divisions have actual rankings. We got champions, we got vacated belts, like Brandon Vera and Ong Song are champions in 2 divisions that don't have any rankings, and whenever you watch a One Championship show, there are a lot of fighters who are always making their debuts. All the time. I think recently we just had, 2 fighters who, upon 2 fights, are now in the main events in One Championships. So yeah, the divisions, the big divisions for heavyweight and light heavyweight, they are lacking, sadly. But Ong Sanong, he is the poster boy and the face of One Championships. Although he recently lost his last match, losing the middleweight belt to Rainer de Riddler, you should go keep up with this guy. He is one of the best fighters out there in the world. And so you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Come back after a short break here as I continue on with my list of the 24 best fighters in MMA. See you soon.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. You're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, and in honor of NBA All-Star Weekend with the 24 best players being announced for the All-Star teams, I'm going to announce the 24 best MMA fighters right now in the world of mixed martial arts. So right now I'm going in at number 6 here. We have Israel Adesanya coming in at number 6. So Israel Adesanya, if things go the way how it is expected to go, with Israel Adesanya defeating Blackwix, and then him moving up, defeating Jon Jones, and then him potentially fighting against Stipe Miocic, Israel Adesanya, he's trying to go and become the next GOAT. And I appreciate that. I love it. I say Israel Adesanya right now, in terms of stock and momentum, he is the hottest fighter right now in the UFC. Without a doubt. But now, can Israel Adesanya defeat Jan Blachowicz? I'm not really sure. I don't know. Me and my friends are talking about it, and we're saying, oh man, it's the power of Jan Blachowicz versus the skill and technical abilities of Israel Adesanya. And I started thinking to myself, well, it was a power versus speed game with Paulo Costa versus Izzy, and I really don't think we're going to see a easier matchup with Israel Adesanya versus Jan Blachowicz. I say this fight, without a doubt, will be the biggest test in Izzy's career. So for Jan, also same thing goes for Jan Blachowicz. And so for Izzy versus Jan, I don't know who's going to win that. I really don't. This fight can end in the first round. It can end in second. Here's the thing. I don't see this fight ending by decision. I really don't. I can't see somebody like Jan who is perfectly fine eating shots in order to go for one right overhand knockout. And it's hard to see Israel Adesanya not trying to go find his shots against Jan Blachowicz when he barrels his way through. So one of the issues when I saw Jan Blachowicz versus Dominic Reyes, I was looking at the fight and I was like, okay, for as good of a striker Dominic Reyes is, and he is a better striker than Jan in terms of like eye test and technical striking abilities, Jan just hits so much harder. There's nobody that Israel Adesanya has ever fought who hits harder than Jan. So because of that, I have to make a possible. I'm kind of making a prediction here that Jan Blachowicz would knock out Israel Adesanya in the second round. Yep, that's my prediction. Now, could I be completely wrong in this? Could Israel Adesanya become a double champion? Yes, there's a real possibility. But from what I'm seeing right now with how both fighters fight, I can easily see Jan Blachowicz just barrel his way through the defense of Izzy and winning the bout. But you know what? Israel Adesanya, he is more than anybody else right now in the UFC, or in general in MMA. I think there's nobody who appeals to that young demographic, the young 18 to 32 demographic, more so than Israel Adesanya. Like, I'm looking at this list right now, there's nobody who really grabs the attention and connects with the 18-32 crowd on social media, more so than Izzy. Yeah, there's some people saying, "Oh, Izzy Adesanya, he's very immature. He's very childish. He's 30-something years old, like 32 years old, but he looks like he's a 21-year-old guy." And yeah, Izzy Adesanya, that is kind of true, but at least he's appealing to a young audience because nobody else here, at least, is targeting that specific audience in their social media. Nobody. Maybe Conor McGregor, Colby Covington, he's trying to appeal to a certain demographic. But Izzy Adesanya, he definitely is grabbing the attention of a specific demographic that nobody else in MMA, in the world, are doing right now. And then number 7 here, Zhang Weili. Zhang Weili, in my book, is the number 1 fighter, the number 1 female fighter in mixed martial arts. She's not only competing in the biggest mixed martial arts organization out there, UFC, she's also competed amongst the very best at One Championships. She's only lost once, and that was to Mang Bo back at 1. And I think if Mang Bo were to fight against Zhang Weili again, we'll see a better version of Zhang Weili, and she could defeat Mang Bo, and Mang Bo is one of the best out there in the world. I think Mang Bo has all the tools to be a future champion at One Championships. And so for Zhang Weili, also without doubt her bout against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, that fight alone is going to get her to the UFC Hall of Fame. And what's interesting about Zhang Weili is that she is, in without a doubt, the most competitive division right now in women's mixed martial arts. Kayla Harrison, Valentina, and Matt Nunes. One issue you can go say with all of them is that, okay, they're all fighting against like weak competition. Like, even Chris Cyborg, she's fighting against weak competition. Zhang Weili, she's got Carla Esparza around the corner. She's got Rose Namajunas. She could fight against Jessica Andrade yet again. She could fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She could fight against any prospects coming up, whether it be Alexa Grasso, who normally competes in the strawweight division. She could be fighting somebody like Marina Rodriguez. She could fight somebody like Cynthia Cavallo. There's a lot of people she can compete in the strawweight division. And let's not forget about this. She can also compete against Amanda Ribas, who a lot of people are touting as the next big thing in the strawweight division. The strawweight division right now is incredibly deep, comprised of former champions, former top contenders, young prospects. It's one of the deepest divisions out there right now in the world. And so if Zhang Weili can go and pull away and maintain her belt for 3 years, you could arguably say that, hey, the two GOATs of women's mixed martial arts could be Amanda Nunes or Zhang Weili. You could actually say that. I think Zhang Weili has the potential to be up there in the same name as Amanda Nunes in terms of dominance. And if she keeps at this for the next 2-3 years, she could be the GOAT of the women's strawweight division. The GOAT of the women's strawweight division right now, to me, is Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I think Zhang Weili is right around the corner there, and that she can defend her belt as much as Joanna has. Number 8, Jan Blackwix. The guy is a complete monster. He is a hammer, one-punch knockout. Don't have to really say much about this guy. Kayla Harrison. So Kayla Harrison, if none of you pay attention to Kayla, she is the 155-pound champion for PFL. And Kayla Harrison, when you see her, you're like, oh my goodness, this girl, she can, without a doubt, compete and beat any women's champion out there in the world. She can. Doesn't matter if you're heavyweight, doesn't matter if you're a fighter at One Championship, doesn't matter if you're fighting at Bellator, doesn't matter if you're a champion at UFC. Kayla Harrison can probably beat you in both the wrestling and the striking. She's that darn talented. Now, the reason why I'm not going to place Kayla Harrison that high compared to someone like Zhang Weili and Matt Nunes is because the competition she's faced isn't all that up there. She's got the talent and she's got the skills to be a top champion in any organization, but unless we see her compete amongst actual competition, we have to look at Kayla Harrison's run as PFL champion and how good and how legitimate she is at 155 compared to everyone else with kind of an asterisk, sadly. Number 10. So number 10, I got Stipe Miocic. He is maybe the GOAT for the UFC's heavyweight division. That's a huge maybe. I do know that he's got the record right now for most wins and most title defenses right now in the UFC's heavyweight division. But it's noted here, though, Stipe Miocic in the heavyweight division, it doesn't have the history of champions holding their belt for a long period of time. And if Miocic can defeat Francis Ngannou and maybe one more defense, it's a wrap then. It really is rap, because some people still bring up Cain Velasquez, like peak Cain Velasquez. Who's better? Peak Cain Velasquez or peak Fedor? Or, peak Stipe Miocic? There'll be some people who say peak Cain Velasquez was the perfect fighter in the heavyweight division. But Stipe Miocic, he's almost there. He's almost there. I think in the pound for pound rankings, he's not even all that high, because there's an asterisk to, like, the heavyweight division as a whole. But sadly, Stipe Miocic, he has to go keep on trucking, keep on fighting, and if things goes way as it should be in his fight against Francis Ganu, I think people will respect Stipe Miocic a lot more. Number 11 here, Zhang Jing. So, to those of you who don't watch Zhang Jing, she is pretty much the main girl. I say she's like the best women's fighter for One Championships. And One Championships has a plethora of really darn good fighters, whether it be Stam Fairtex, Angela Lee, Tiffany Teo, Mang Bo. Zhang Jing is the best. Yes, Angela Lee, she defeated Zhang Jing last time they fought. But I think if in an alternative universe, if Angela Lee and Zhang Jing were to fight 100 times, who would win out? I say Zhang Jing. I really believe so. But yeah, Angela Lee, she's right now, I think, only 24 or 25 years old, compared to Zhang, who is 32. There have been dream fight scenarios out there being thrown, being like, I think Chapter Sidon was talking about it, where he's like, would it be a dream fight if we saw Zhang Weili versus Zhang Jing? And that fight could be fight of the year. I say it could even be better than Yuan Chichek versus Zhang Weili. That's how good of a striker Zhang Jing is. She is the complete package. Now, will she I would love to see Zhang Jing compete in the Adamant Grand Prix. I think she can definitely win it all. Now, will it happen, though? I'm not really sure. But Zhang Jing, she's one of the best fighters out there in the entire world. If you're to tell me right now who are the best fighters in terms of their accomplishments within their respective organizations, I gotta say Zhang Weili, Valentino Shuchenko, Zhang Jing, and Nunes. Those are the absolute best, the elite of the elite in women's mixed martial arts. And if you talk about the strawweight division being the most deepest women's division out there in the world, then you gotta say it's either Zhang Jing or Zhang Weili being the two best female fighters out there in the world. And then we go from Zhang Jing to Deiveson Figueiredo. I did not put Demetrius Johnson in my top 24 list. I didn't do so. And you know what? I am very upset about that, because I know Demetrius Johnson. By the way, Demetrius, he'll be fighting in April, and he'll be defending his flyweight belt in April. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, okay, why is Demetrius Johnson not on my list? And he hasn't defended his belt for almost 3 years. It's going to be 2.5 years since he was in a title fight for One Championship. Of course, COVID happened. But also, one thing to note, though, there's going to be this sad... Okay, so, Demetrius Johnson, years down the line, hopefully he will not be seen down the line as the Tim Sylvia for the men's fight division. Because the men's fight division now is hot. It's on fire right now. And sadly, in order to go and fix that division, they had to go scrap Demetrius Johnson. Because Demetrius Johnson, similar to Valentino Shuchenko, was that because they are both such great fighters, they end up making the other fighters in the division look bad. And we don't even see that much back and forth fights between Valentina or Demetrius Johnson. We rarely ever see it, though. There was John Dodson at one time, but other than him, Demetrius Johnson, when he was the flyweight champion, he was dominant. He conquered that division. He cleaned it out to the point that they had to go make an Ultimate Fighter series to go find the next big challenger for Demetrius Johnson. And Demetrius Johnson, he wiped it out. It was Tim Elliott also. And so for Deiveson Figueiredo, now that he pretty much is the star of the men's fight division, now considering that Deiveson Figueiredo, that he's got all the backing coming from the UFC, and his fight against Moreno, Deiveson Figueiredo, he is one of the most exciting fighters out there right now in the UFC. And considering the fact that this guy has got the complete package, like he is incredibly fast, hard hitter, great grappler, good jiu-jitsu guy. Deiveson Figueiredo, unlike Demetrius Johnson, I think will be booked better, and he'll be presented and promoted and marketed a lot more better than Demetrius Johnson. So, Figueiredo, this guy is a great fighter. Demetrius Johnson, he's not on my list because he just hasn't been active all that recently. And while I'm at it, though, letting you know, I don't have Conor McGregor on my list. I don't have Nate Diaz also on my list. Jon Jones, he competed last year in 2020. Alright then, the guy fought. Conor McGregor, I'm not sure what his future is. I'm not sure what the future is for Nate Diaz. Every single day, I'm hearing news. Hey, he's calling out this guy. Or hey, what about this matchup? Or hey, what about this fight here? And you know what? Just like Khabib Nurmagomedov, I'm just like, okay, I cannot see you as this guy who's up to date and will continue to fight on. I don't see it. I don't think Khabib will continue fighting. I don't think Nate will continue to fight. I don't think Conor McGregor are going to go fight anytime this year. Maybe next year, maybe, but since I'm not sure how active they are, I cannot put any of those three fighters up there, which is sad. Because Conor McGregor, he is the biggest box office draw in the UFC. Nate Diaz, he's one of the biggest superstars out there in the UFC. We got Khabib, huge superstar. The UFC right now is lacking superstar, mega, huge talents right now in the UFC. Now, they certainly have talented fighters. They do. But other than Israel Adesanya, and right now sort of Kumar Usman, we don't have those fighters out there that people are talking about. Because my friends, they don't watch UFC, they don't watch mixed martial arts, but even then, they talk about Nate Diaz, they talk about Khabib, they talk about Conor McGregor, they talk about those three fighters still because they're able to break that barrier of mainstream success. Now, Adesanya is doing it, Kumar Usman's doing it. I think the UFC really wants to push Deiveson Figueiredo and Francis Ngannou to be in that position. But only time can tell if and when those fighters will get to a position of becoming huge, mega, breakout stars. Kumar Usman, a lot of people will agree that only just recently he became a breakout superstar, even though he's been champion for a while. So that's how hard it is to become a superstar in the UFC. You're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Come back after a short break here. See you soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. I'm discussing the top 24 best MMA fighters right now in the world. And I put down here Angela Lee. So, chances are, your typical MMA fan doesn't know who Angela Lee is. Well, Angela Lee, she defeated Zhang Jing, arguably the best strawweight fighter in the entire world. And here's the thing with Angela Lee. She's only 24 years old. Angela Lee is a 24-year-old wrestling phenom who is competing amongst the very best strawweights and atomweights in the entire world right now in a stacked divisions in one championships. And Angela Lee could be competing in a Grand Prix tournament, which could be coming up in the summer of 2021. And Angela Lee is one of those fighters who, without a doubt, this girl, if she were to go to UFC, immediate superstar. Immediately. Because not only is she already a champion, she is already experienced in fighting. She's well adept in boxing. Like, she knows how to handle pressure fighters already. She's a great grappler, a great wrestler. And she's very young, also attractive looking. So, if Angela Lee, because she has said in interviews that her main inspiration for being an MMA fighter comes from watching Ronda Rousey. And her main goal wasn't even going to go and be at one championship. Her main goal is to be a UFC fighter. But on the way there, she's became the one championship, atomweight champion. And so Angela Lee, down the line, 2-3 years in the future, she could be the biggest star, female star in the future. She is the exact opposite of Macy Barber, because Macy Barber came in as, alright then, here she is, great wrestler, gonna come in, gonna save the division. Not happening, or else it's not gonna happen anytime soon. Angela Lee, she can do everything Macy Barber can do, except she's smaller, and the only thing missing right now for the UFC is a potential Animate division, which is something that a lot of people do want to see. So Angela Lee, she is at number 13 out of the 24. And then I got here Peter Yan. So Peter Yan, he is the current bantamweight champion for the UFC. Now, I think there was a poll that went out there on how long people expect Peter Yan to defend his belt, and people are only saying 1 year. Because it'll be Peter Yan, Aljamain Sterling, and winning that bout fights against Corey Sandhagen, and things look very dire enough for Peter Yan. They really do. Anyone could conceivably see either Aljamain Sterling or Corey Sandhagen dethroning Peter Yan at some point in the near future. And on top of him, there's another fight that people are very wary of in terms of their future as world champion, and that is Alexander Volkanovski. So Peter Yan and Alexander Volkanovski, when they were shown the poll, I forgot what poll this came from, but in this voting, we had over 1,000 people voted, and they said that Volkanovski and Peter Yan are the two fighters who are most likely to lose their belts by the end of 2021. Also, if we were to carry that over, potentially 2022. And Peter Yan and Volkanovski, they're objectively great fighters. It just, there seems to be a lot of following for fighters who are going against them, like Corey Sandhagen coming off that one insane knee knockout he had on Frankie Edgar. And for Volkanovski, people are really hyped in for Max Holloway. I will always argue that Volkanovski won both fights against Holloway. He won decisively, in my own mind, both of those bouts. And glimpses or small moments or short moments of Holloway winning his bout, winning in exchanges, is enough for him to go win the bout. So Alexander Volkanovski, he is the UFC's featherweight champion. We're going to see him versus Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega, I believe, will be a more harder matchup, will be a tougher matchup than Holloway. Yes, Volkanovski can wrestle, but I don't really believe that Volkanovski, his wrestling is good enough to match up with someone like Brian Ortega. I have never seen anybody, there's nobody in Brian Ortega in his entire run in the UFC that has out-grappled him. The second this guy gets to you, he will tap you out. And his boxing against his bout against Chang Sung Jung was stellar. Absolutely stellar. I'm going to say that Brian Ortega is within the same realm of boxing skills as Max Holloway. I am that high on Brian Ortega. So if Volkanovski, if he can go defeat Brian Ortega, I'm pretty sure Volkanovski can go defeat Max Holloway for the third time. And so up to this point here, I've been mentioning champions, title contenders. Well, here's one fighter that I believe... I'm going to say this. This fighter will become the UFC's lightweight champion by the middle of next year. That's my prediction here. That is Charles Oliveira, number 16. Tell me, what can Charles Oliveira, what can he not do that the other fighters currently right in the lightweight division can do? What can he not do? He can wrestle you. The dude had a great wrestling showcase against Kevin Lee. And Kevin Lee is no slouch spot in terms of wrestling. I think Kevin Lee is just as good as a grappler as Michael Chandler. I think he's better. He's even a better grappler than Justin Gaethje. So Oliveira, he took apart Kevin Lee. Oliveira, he is as erratic and as bizarre in his striking. He throws an insanely high volume of strikes, more so than anybody else. Now, can you catch him? Definitely you can catch him. Anybody in the lightweight division can beat each other. But I believe right now, Charles Oliveira, I think his striking and his grappling is so on point in terms of, I think I can see Oliveira pressuring Michael Chandler so much to the point that I don't see Chandler knocking him out. I can see Charles Oliveira out grappling something like Justin Gaethje or Tony Ferguson. I can really see it. I can see Oliveira tapping out anybody in the lightweight division. I can see Oliveira outstriking anybody in the lightweight division. I am that high in Charles Oliveira. Now, will he be given the opportunity? I'm not really sure. I don't know. There seems to not be that much fanfare or excitement for Charles Oliveira fight, except for me. But Charles Oliveira definitely deserves some hype. Another fighter who definitely deserves some hype is Brian Ortega. People are already talking about it. Holloway, Volkanovski 3. No. It's going to be Volkanovski, Brian Ortega. We are seeing the best version of Brian Ortega we have ever seen. Boxing on point. 100%. His boxing, his posture, his ability to go strike is the best it's ever been in his career. And nobody, I repeat, nobody in UFC history has ever out-grappled this guy, ever. Nobody. There's never been a single instance to which somebody out-grappled Brian Ortega in his UFC run. So Brian Ortega, I'm going to say that he is higher in the totem pole than Max Holloway. Max Holloway, he's got a title belt under his name. Alright then, but I think Ortega, he is good enough he's good enough to go compete and beat Ortega, to go beat Holloway and to beat Volkanovski and become a long-range champion. I believe that. He just has to be given the opportunity, and he has been given the opportunity. He's going to be fighting against Alexander Volkanovski in the next couple months. And if Ortega were to defeat Volkanovski and fight against Max Holloway, Brian Ortega, he will be the favorite of the fights. Hardcore MMA fans will say Ortega will be the favorite to fight against Max Holloway. That's what I'm saying there. And another fighter here, Carla Esparza. I am naming 3 fighters right now who deserve a lot more respect, who are very respected in their respective careers. We can all accept this, right? Carla Esparza is the best wrestler in the strawweight division. Is that an argument? Now, is Carla Esparza the most exciting fighter? Is she the most polished fighter? Is she entertaining? Is she somebody that's going to sell tickets? No. 100% no. And that's not me being like mean to Carla Esparza. It is when you go look at the current strawweight landscape right now. You got Joanna Jędrzejczyk, we got Zhang Weili, you got Rose Namajunas. A lot of people want Rose Namajunas to succeed. A lot of people want Andrade to succeed. People were even really high on Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Ribas. People expect them to succeed. People want to see Maria Gapova succeed in the fight division. There's a lot of fighters ahead of Carla Esparza that people want to see succeed. But here's the problem, though. All those fighters, they fight very similarly. Similarly in the sense that you know where they're going to go. They're strikers first, grapplers second. Carla Esparza is the best grappler in the strawweight division, and she only needs 1 or 2 takedowns to go defeat you. Now, Carla Esparza, in her striking, it has sort of improved. Huge sort of improved. It's been getting better. Her wrestling has improved significantly a lot more since her bout against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I think if Joanna and Carla Esparza were to fight again, Carla Esparza could beat her. Now, the problem with Carla Esparza, though, is that we really don't know what version of Carla Esparza we're going to see. Are we going to see Carla Esparza, wrestling aficionado, going to grapple you, going to keep you down there the entire fight, going to win by the point system? Or are we going to see the Carla Esparza that doesn't take you down, tries to box you, is incredibly passive, and she'll take you down, and then when she does take you down, she's going to attempt some weird submission armbar victory or a single leg key lock for some reason instead of controlling on the ground. What Carla Esparza are we going to see? Carla Esparza is such a weird coin because there's a scenario where we see Carla Esparza taking down someone like Zhang Weili and winning the fight by unanimous decision after like 5 consecutive minutes of wrestling per round. But there's another universe out there where Carla Esparza, she's going to go meet Zhang Weili in the center of the octagon, and then they'll start boxing for no reason, and then Carla Esparza is going to go shoot her for a takedown, and then Zhang Weili is going to outmuscle her or give her a good uppercut as she's attempting a double leg takedown and getting knocked out. I don't know. Carla Esparza is very frustrating. She really is. We don't know what version of her we're going to see. Ortega, Oliveira, we know what to expect. Carla Esparza, she's one of those fighters that if all the planets align perfectly, this girl is unstoppable. She can be the Khabib of the division. But that's if all the planets line up perfectly and she's coming with the right game plan and her cornermen and her coaching crew and her training camp are prepping her up the right way. She fights too often like a champ. She's either overly aggressive or just too passive. But if she gets it down perfectly, she's unstoppable. She can be. Note the word can. Now, will she be unstoppable as she goes and competes yet again in the top 5 of the strawweight division? I'm not really sure. I don't know. Then we go to Francis Ngannou. So, Francis Ngannou here. It's weird to judge Ngannou because you look at his fight camp and you look at his Instagram videos and you look on YouTube and you're like, oh my goodness, this guy he should be like the end all be all dominator. He should be like a Thanos of the heavyweight division, right? Like, the guy is freakishly strong. He is in the best shape of his life if you go follow his videos. The guy says, it's from Ngannou's camp. His manager, his coaches, he himself is saying, I am developing an all-around MMA game. But I have yet to see that. If there's anybody right now who's developing that all-around MMA game right now, it has to be Derek Lewis. Because Derek Lewis, this guy is like transforming himself from boxer to kickboxer to wrestler to jiu-jitsu guy. What's going on with this guy, huh? Like, Curtis Blaydes versus Derek Lewis will be one of the most confusing bouts out there in UFC history. And this fight might either be a complete wash in terms of how boring it could be after 3 rounds of action, or it could end from anywhere between 5 seconds to a minute and 12 seconds. That's how weird Derek Lewis is. But at least for Derek Lewis, though, the reason I'm not putting him up here is because he's got his ceiling of what he can accomplish in the UFC is so much lower. So much lower. Which is upsetting, because I love Derek Lewis way more than Francis Ngannou. But Francis Ngannou, kind of like Esparza, when all the planets align together, and he knows what he's doing, and he's trained properly, this guy should be unbeatable. We don't know how good of a grappler he is, because he's never really been tested. Stipe Miocic, who isn't a grappler for the most part, just grappled the heck out of the guy, and has completely outboxed him. I think Francis Ngannou, he needs to develop an all-around, like, striking game. I want to see him attempt more body kicks, a lot more leg kicks. Whenever he does throw leg kicks out there, they're vicious, they're awesome. It looks like they hurt. But you know what? I don't know about Francis Ngannou. I don't know. The guy is finally getting his opportunity, yet again, to redeem himself in battling Stipe Miocic. But are we going to see this bout where it's Stipe Miocic just slowly taking apart Francis Ngannou with traditional boxing skills? Are we going to see Francis Ngannou tire out by the tail end of the second round? I don't know. The guy knocks out everybody in the heavy division in just a couple punches. Honestly, I would love to see Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou again. I know. One of the worst fights ever in UFC history. You really want to see a rematch between those two? The answer is yes. I think it was mostly more of a mental thing more than anything else. Derek Lewis, he's trying to bounce back his career at the time. Francis Ngannou, he's trying to bounce back his career after losing to Stipe Miocic. Both fighters look very lost. Both fighters look like they just didn't want to be there. Both fighters lost confidence. And you know what? We saw the very worst versions of both of them in their bout they had. Now, if the two were to fight again, it would be exactly what we always wanted. You see these two guys throwing out insane haymakers, trying to knock each other out. That's the fight we wanted to see, but that didn't happen. And you know what? For Ganu versus Stipe Miocic, and for Derek Lewis versus Curtis Blaydes, hopefully both these fighters will get their act together, and we're going to see a performance that we can actually be proud of, and they themselves can be proud of what they've done in the octagon. You're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast as I write about the top 24 after a short commercial break here. See you soon.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And we are back. So let's run about the last group of fighters here. So coming in at number 20 here, we got Mang Bo. So Mang Bo, she is, I think she's only 25 years old. She's about only 25 years old. She's the one woman to have defeated Zhang Weili in MMA. So if you want to know that one loss from Zhang Weili, that's coming from Mang Bo. And Mang Bo, who is a natural strawweight, is competing at atom weight and looks to fight against Angela Lee at some point for the title this year. She already got her buy-in already for the Atomweight Grand Prix that's set to happen in the summer of 2021. So don't be surprised if Mang Bo is able to take the title away from Angela Lee at some point later this year. Number 21, we got Gegard Mousasi. Alright, Gegard Mousasi, this dude was right there in terms of being a contender for the title. But Gegard Mousasi, he was able to leave UFC out of his own whim. He's making a lot more money in Bellator. There are a lot of more fighters nowadays who are making a lot more money in Bellator. And also, Gegard Mousasi, he is, I think, the current middleweight champion. He's the middleweight champion for the division. He defeated Douglas Lima. So Gegard Mousasi, he's definitely a person who, this guy is obviously the elite in Bellator, and if you're coming for the UFC, he'll be in the same position as Michael Chandler, immediate top 5 contender for either lightweight or for middleweight. And then we have Rainer de Riddler. For those of you who don't know Rainer de Riddler, he is the man who dethroned Aung Sang for the middleweight title. So Aung Sang, him losing the middleweight belt, he hopes to go and get a rematch off it against Rainer de Riddler. He'll be competing at some point in April. And number 23, so 23-24, we got 2 Bellator champions also, with Patricio Pitbull and Chris Cyborg. Patricio Pitbull, pretty much Bellator's Davison Figueiredo, except this guy's like proper jacked. It's weird. There's a wrestler out there who's like named John Silver, and John Silver, like, he's very amusing to a lot of people because he's just like this really short, small guy, but he's jacked. And that's what Patricio Pitbull is. This dude is alarmingly fast and built and strong as heck, that the way he moves doesn't logically make sense. It's kind of like, okay, imagine like this big buff dog, but he's only like super small, and then like lifting weights. Like, it's just weird to see someone like Patricio Pitbull. And then we have Chris Cyborg. Now, Chris Cyborg is in a very weird spot right now in her career, in the sense that she is the world champion for a major organization. Congratulations for her. But every time you type up Chris Cyborg news, it's always her challenging someone else from another organization. And one of the knocks on Bellator, just like PFL, is that they have a great fighter, a great champion, but an issue with that is the fact that their division is really weak. The PFL and Bellator, their divisions are really weak. The 2 best women's divisions out there that are major, not including Invicta, would have to be 1 championships in UFC right now. And we're always seeing, hey, Chris Cyborg, she's challenging Amanda Nunes. Hey, Chris Cyborg, she's trying to challenge Kayla Harrison. Hey, Chris Cyborg, she's trying to challenge Valentino Shuchenko. We're seeing these challenges being thrown out there, but she could have re-signed with the UFC, or she could have like played ball with them, and now she's in Bellator, and she's still challenging fighters in the UFC. So what's really going on there? We're gonna, by the end of next year, we're gonna see a whole lot of major fighters coming in, major female fighters coming to the Bellator organization from UFC, from other organizations, because we're seeing a lot more like fighter movement happening, where fighters are openly, discussing their contracts. They're discussing how much money they're making. They want to go and optimize themselves, how much money they can go make. So a lot of that's happening nowadays. So don't be surprised if a lot more female fighters are looking to go move towards another organization, as UFC is still trying to go and build upon more female fighters coming in from the Performance Center, whether it be from Brazil or from Asia. Dana White specifically really wants to go target that Asian demographic, or go get more Asian fighters coming in from Asia, specifically in China, to the UFC. We're seeing an influx of more Asian fighters coming in to the UFC. And considering fighters like Yang Xiaonan and the success we have with Zhang Weili, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more fighters being imported in from other countries, which will lead to other fighters within the UFC, or more journeyman or veteran fighters, being like, okay, I want to go sign for another organization. I want to sign for PFL. I want to go sign in for Bellator. I want to go sign in as a free agent to one championship. Those are all real possibilities. And so that is my mega stacked all-star team for mixed martial arts, the 24 best fighters out there. If you have any ideas who you believe it was left out of the list, who should have been there, do you believe some fighters should have gone there over Mousasi, some fighters should go over there instead of Mang Bo? Is Petr Yan a top 24 fighter in the world, considering how early his reign is at bantamweight? So what do you think? Feel free to message me once again on Instagram, Facebook, and or Twitter. And then we go on to the news brief portion of the podcast here. And we have a whole... So, this is an interesting one here. So, first off, the PFL. The PFL has raised $65 million for growth expansion. $65 million. This is coming in from the AP in Los Angeles. Greg Beecham. He's going to say that the Professional Fighters League says it has raised $65 million in new financing to boost its expansion and growth. The MMA promotion announced in a statement Thursday that the money will go toward talent acquisition and international expansion. The PFL returns to competition this spring after canceling the 2020 season amidst the coronavirus pandemic. Unlike most combat sports entities, the PFL competes in a season-long format that includes playoffs and championship fights. The promotion hasn't held any events since December of 2019, but will begin its current season in April 23 in Las Vegas. Now, despite hiatus, the PFL has continued to grow, reaching a broadcast deal with ESPN and acquiring several well-known fighters who have yet to compete for the organization. The PFL returns this year with Canadian welterweight Rory McDonald coming up from his time frame in Bellator, former UFC heavyweight champion Fabricio Verdum, and former UFC lightweight champion Anthony Showtime Pettis. And if you've been following up on Anthony Pettis, he is really excited. He is very excited, and he looks to go and expand on his gym and become kind of a trainer for PFL. You also have Fabricio Verdum, who's being heralded as the Michael Jordan of the heavyweight division. This isn't coming from me. This is coming in straight directly from PFL's Twitter, that Fabricio Verdum is the Michael Jordan of the heavyweight division, of all heavyweights apparently, among all heavy divisions out there. Fabricio Verdum at one point was widely considered as the GOAT of the heavyweight division. There was a time frame to which that was a thing. Now, obviously, now in hindsight, it's not. But Fabricio Verdum is an all-time great. But calling him the Michael Jordan, yikes. So, Rory McDonald, Verdum, Anthony Pettis, those are three huge names. Now, once again, I like to see a lot more women fighters being announced out there, because I like to see more fighters go and compete against Kayla Harrison. Really give her a run for her money. And not only that, we're also getting like that former Olympian boxer coming into PFL also. So I'm excited for that. So it goes over the history of the PFL. The PFL says its new round of financing was led by Ares Capital, Elysian Park Ventures, and Nighthead Capital. Elysian Park Ventures is the investment arm for Los Angeles Dodgers ownership group, while Ares Capital is a subsidiary of an investment company confounded by Atlanta Hawks owner Anthony Ressler. Along with the acquisition of UFC champions and fighters, we also got, here's the name here, Olympic boxing gold medalist Clarissa Shields, who is training for MMA debut, will be fighting for PFL, currently training under Kayla Harrison. I am hyped for that. According to the Jacksonville Academy camp, they're all saying Clarissa Shields, man, she's picking up all this like very, very quickly. Her wrestling and her grappling is steadily improving. And expect big things coming from Clarissa Shields when she does get in the cage and does go fight in MMA. I'm excited for the debut of Clarissa Shields more than anything else for PFL. So this is coming in from MMAmania.com, written by Jesse Holland, and we're still doing this. So headline, Jorge Masvidal follows Dana White, launches new attack on fake ESPN reporter. It's been a tough week for ESPN reporters. Not long after UFC President Dana White called media mainstay El Hawani a douche for his take on it's the Mandalorian issue with the Republican conservative actress giving her take and making the comparison of being a conservative Republican with like Jews and the Holocaust. Really looked bad, really did. And Dana White is defending Gina while also like being aggressive on El Hawani. Nothing really new here, because it's been like a decade of Dana White just like sandbagging on El Hawani. But now Jorge Masvidal, he wasn't a fan of the way Brett Okamoto, yes, that Brett Okamoto, the main like figurehead for all the interviews from ESPN, that guy. So Jorge Masvidal, he has a problem with him. He says he was cozying up to 170-pound champion Kumar Usman, who wants to rematch with him, and puts him in a coffin. So, alright. Usman then says on his Twitter, when ESPN used their fake MMA reporter to report on a guy with a personality disorder, #FreeMarty. And this is just, okay, so Okamoto, he's just like retweeting out what Kumar Usman is saying. Because Usman says, you don't run anything in Miami if you're getting beat up like that. No city wants a loser. Miami's mine. I run Miami. And, so ESPN, by the way, with them insulting the ESPN writers, they are losing money. They are. Now, obviously, like $50,000. I think the rate that they lost was $50,000, which isn't much. But still, here's the thing. $50,000? That could potentially be a fighter's entire salary. UFC fighters, especially in the middle to low tier, they don't make that much money. $50,000 is a lot of money, okay? So, Dana White, he's calling a bunch of ESPN writers hacks. And here's one thing you gotta know about Dana White here. If you know his history and how he became successful, a lot about him is just like him being successful off like being in the right place at the right time and him being opportunistic. And him, like, having the right connections. That's him. And I understand that the media right now is incredibly toxic. and it's incredibly hypocritical. It ain't fun. It makes no sense. Look, I'm a guy who is a huge NBA basketball fan. One day, because there's this thing going on right now with the player Draymond Green, and I completely agree with Draymond Green here, in that he believes that corporations, athletes, and the media, it's all hypocritical, and there's a double standard to how athletes are being treated. There is, and I believe that. In the world of basketball, we will one day say Russell Westbrook is an amazing player. Well, we'll say player X is amazing. Then the following day later, we're gonna be like, player X was always bad. We knew that player X was always bad, and that's how it is. Like, reporting and media nowadays, this isn't pertaining to like, media journalists, but people generally, content creators, young people, we always want to be first. Why do you want to be last if you can be first? So we go out there and we say things in order to go get people to notice us. And when you look online, when we go see people like Logan Paul and Jake Paul, and even someone like Colby Covington, and heck, to a lesser extent, Conor McGregor, doing things that annoy others gets you famous, and it will make you money. And so, a lot of I'm not saying that Helwani is innocent here, but there definitely are reporters out there who do things like trade machines, and we are always going back and forth in terms of narratives. And as a sports reporter myself, I get it. Alright, then we have to create narratives in order to make the sport seem more interesting than it actually is, to entice viewers, and in order for us to be, financially stable. We kind of have to do this stuff. Would I like to live in a world where we're not constantly forcing or driving in narratives? I would love that. But for the better part of over 100 years, we've been doing that since World War II. Not even before that, actually. That's for digital and for broadcast media. It's been doing that for over 110 years for broadcast media. But in terms of just general journalists spouting out nonsense and stuff, it's a pretty normal thing. And so it is kind of ridiculous here that Jorge Masvidal, I don't believe he actually believes what he's saying. Dana White, I believe what he's saying. He is definitely somebody that generally people in the MMA community can all accept for kind of having a fragile ego. And even he himself really shouldn't defend the Gina thing happening with Mandalorian. I don't know. I think Gina Carano, yeah. I think it's Gina Carano. He shouldn't defend stuff like Gina Carano says. Now, I understand what Gina Carano was trying to say. And I understand what Dana White is trying to say also in him trying to defend Gina. I get it. But the way that they're doing it, though, what Gina's handling, how she's handling herself in social media, how Dana White is handling the whole issue right now, and him giving his 2 cents on it, and not really giving a good take himself, and him not being the best role model out there. There are definitely some people out there whose opinions you really shouldn't hear. Now, I'm not saying, freedom of speech is bad. I'm just saying if you're going to say something, don't say something that could sound really dumb, whether it be on Twitter, on any social media platform, or even on TV. Just don't. But I will say this, Brett Okamoto, man, this guy is an honest to goodness, he is a great reporter. He's a great journalist. I read all his articles pretty much every day, and his interviews he has with Dana White is really good. Even Dana White can go say it. I'm pretty sure Dana White has nothing bad to say about Brett Okamoto. And you know what? If Brett Okamoto and Dana White were to meet each other again, I'm pretty darn sure that Dana White will be like, oh, by the way, with Jorge Masvidal talking smack on you, don't worry, I like you, Okamoto. You're good. You're better than Ariel Helwani guy, who I don't even think Ariel Helwani is even a bad journalist. He's just doing his job. And so with that being said, I'm going to round about this podcast here saying thank you. You have been an awesome audience. Once again, give me your take. Who do you believe are the 24 best fighters in mixed martial arts? All I got to say is thank you. Thank you for tuning to the GSMC MMA podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Outcasts, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.